Welcome back. Coffee with the coaches. Brad, was that your cue there?
I've done it every time. I will say my name, and
You do it every time,
yes.
Brad.
I will say my name. You're gonna just yes. Episode 11, Coffee with the Coaches. We're back. I'm Coach Brad Dunn, joined by
I'm Coach John Duncan, and we have Goodman James.
Hello, everyone.
Having a Coke there. Well, and very excited to have you on episode 11 here. Just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Goodman James. I'm the head men's and women's swimming coach at Colorado College. I just finished my 44th year as a collegiate head coach.
Yeah, so we're very, very excited to have you on. John really wanted to go through the introduction today. You sounded so unsure of yourself, John. We needed more enthusiasm from you.
I thought I had the go ahead, Brad. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm making him nervous.
But you know, this is Coffee with the Coaches. Unfortunately, I am drinking a tea today out of my Oregon Ducks mug. My family's Oregon fans. But Coach, what are you joining us with down there today? Did you bring a coffee? Did you bring a tea? What did you bring to our interview?
Ann?
No, he's talking to you, I think.
I'm talking to everybody. Everybody, what'd you bring?
Ann, you go ahead.
I brought a Coke. That's my one real vice in this world. I have to have one of those every day. But I do start the mornings out drinking tea.
Now, I don't know if you're drinking tea in the mornings when I see you at meets, Ann.
That's all different. That's a Coke every session. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I got a Texas pecan blend, and our wife and I's wedding mugs. My wife has a M for Mindy, and I got my J mug here. So, but and pleasure to have you on our show. I guess starting off with the first question. You've been in coaching for, like you said, 44 years. What have you seen, I guess, at the beginning stages of your career in coaching to now of a student athlete? What are the big differences have you seen over a span of 44 years? And I guess every 10 years could be different, but.
Well, and I feel like people would start asking me that about every 10 years. And I would say, oh, they're not really any different. And 10 more years go by and they're not really any different. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like maybe they are. And I think it's just a difference in, how they spent the younger part of their life. Probably the biggest difference is I think the student athletes today are very tolerant and sometimes tolerant to a fault. It's great that they're tolerant of a lot of different opinions and races and ethnicities and identities and all those things. But I think sometimes they're so tolerant that it's a lot harder to teach the team idea so that they hold each other accountable. Don't be too tolerant of what everybody else does.
Interesting.
Definitely agree with that. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that's changed too is my perspective. I mean, when I started coaching in college, I was 22. So I was kind of the same age as my student athletes. And now I'm looking at it from a whole new side.
Yeah, gosh. And that's interesting you say that, because I know that especially in the position, John and I talk about it a lot, where he helped kind of start a program at Rhodes in Memphis. And I'm starting a program here. We just finished our first season. You're getting a lot of the team to take ownership over what we're doing and having those kind of organic leaders that step up and take charge and doing those things. So, I mean, do you, when the way that you kind of work your teams and the way that you've grown as a coach, when you put together a program and you're electing kind of your leaders, your captains, what is your process with that? Do you vote and name captains? Do you provide opportunities for organic leadership for people to step up? What are some things that you like to do for people to find their voice and to take that step forward?
Well, and I think there's always opportunities for organic types of leadership, whether you're a freshman or on up through seniors. As far as specifically captains, we did just do that process actually. We have our captains self-nominate if they're interested in the position. They write a statement about why they want to be a captain and what they'll do for the team. That is shared with the team on our ballots, and then they vote. This year, we also, since we'd been apart for a while, we had each of the candidates for captain present their thoughts on our Zoom call with the team.
Awesome. Getting lots of practice with Zoom calls and doing video chat,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely like that, Ann, as far as kind of having that they be in charge, writing the statement, why they think they deserve that role, and that's definitely a great idea that I never thought of that, and haven't. And then we've always done voting and stuff, and we actually did away with captains a few years ago, but it's a different story. But in the past, we just kind of coaches and the team kind of voted on who we thought. But I like the mission statement. I guess we gotta pause it. Hold on a second.
This was the one, if you watch the one that we did with Adam Cohen and DePaul, he had people that were like remodeling his kitchen show up. And so we had to like,
They were coming in and out.
Like pause it,
gosh.
talk to him, pause it. I think that having Eleanor run in is a little bit more excusable.
Well, both of them came in. My wife just came home. She opened the door and they just
Yeah.
straight.
Well, my dog's at my feet, but he typically doesn't get in the screen. So.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
And go. All right, and so I guess my next question is the longevity in coaching so long. What advice would you give to young coaches to, keep coaching as long as you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think realizing that it's all about relationships. I really notice that now. I'm busy now, but I feel bored because I don't have that interaction with the student athletes. And that's the part that just gives me energy every day and lets me enjoy that. So I think you have to be somebody that wants to have those kind of long-term relationships with student athletes. You also have to stay really true to your own values to make it work. And sometimes that involves making a change of where you are. And I mean, if people have looked at my path sometimes and scratched their heads like, what in the heck are you doing? The directions you're taking, but they have felt right to me. And I think you have to go with your gut sometimes and just do that. But, kind of challenging yourself, challenging your student athletes. I think if you don't challenge people, you hold them back. And if you don't let them challenge you, you don't grow. So kind of allowing that kind of interaction, I think as well is important. And also always being a learner, changing things up every year. I like to say I'm an old coach, but I'm not an old school coach. It's not going to be exciting to me to do it the same way every year, and it sure isn't to them. And just trying to keep up with what the new ideas are and incorporate them into, the base that I know works.
Yeah, so you're kind of talking about like looking at your past and having changed and all of those things. I always getting to know and for people that are watching who didn't know, our first guest on the show, which I clarified with John, Sarah was our first guest. Your daughter, who was a good friend, is a good friend of mine, and we had a great time coaching together when I was at Southwestern. Getting to know her and kind of her childhood growing up with you coaching different places. But I looked back and saw kind of your first coaching job was at Texas Tech. And I was trying to align the years of when you had graduated from Texas Tech and then when you were coaching and realized that you stepped into that coaching role right after you graduated. So what was that like?
It's interesting. I mean, I was actually gone for a year. I graduated, I left, went to Indiana University and got my master's, worked with Doc Councilman, but I finished that in 1 year. And then the coaching position opened at Texas Tech and they hired me. And I was young for my grade anyway, but basically half the team had been my teammates. When I look back on it now, I think, what a crazy disaster that could have been, But I think I was naive enough at the time to think it was going to work, and it did. I'm so grateful to those people who had been my teammates that were then on my team, because of how they treated me. I mean, we just kind of sat down and said, I have to have a little bit different kind of relationship with you now. And I can't do this and can't do that. And we can do these things together. And I just need your cooperation. And they were awesome. So it worked really well, but gosh, I'm amazed that the place hired me at that at that point, to be quite honest. But I'm so grateful for that experience and the way that my teammates treated me as a coach.
Yeah, and not to interrupt you, John, but I did want to kind of follow up with that too. That didn't really give you a whole lot of time to like take a sabbatical of coaching, like go learn the world of coaching and learn how to recruit and learn all these other things. And did you just kind of learn all of that by trial and error, or just by or putting that that initiative into coaching, or did you have some good mentors along the way that helped you out?
Well, and never having been an assistant coach, um, that is something. Your learning curve is a little steeper. So there were certainly things I had to learn on my own. The actual coaching part, I mean, working with Doc Councilman in grad school was just a phenomenal experience, and you couldn't learn from anybody better as far as physiology and stroke technique and all those kinds of things. So I was very prepared, as far as the X's and O's, I guess, of coaching. But yeah, learning about recruiting and managing a team and doing travel and all of those things, you just kind of learn as you go. I mean, the first trip we took on a plane, we landed actually at Dallas Love Field. I went to pick up the vans at Hertz, and they said, well, who's in charge of the group? And I said, well, I am. And they were like, you're not old enough to rent the vans. Wow. And, that hadn't even occurred to me that might be an issue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow.
Well, we still had a situation with your daughter this year, Ann, where
I heard
rent vans, but I mean, just a phenomenal experience, just being at Indiana University for a year, working with one of the best swim coaches. Just an awesome experience. But I guess my next question, you've been in Division II, Division I, and now in Division III. You could have had a lot of positions leaving Arkansas. What attracted you to Division III and to Colorado College?
I feel really fortunate to have coached in all three divisions, and they all have something I've loved, and they all have drawbacks. So I kind of got to the point, after 10 years at Arkansas, and, you're in the SEC, which is the Division I of Division I, and there's some craziness there. And, 10 years of that, I just had this feeling that it wasn't right for me anymore. And I really was always very committed to putting the student first and student athlete. And that much more aligned with a Division III kind of philosophy than it did in like the SEC world. And so I started trying to look. I made a decision that I was going to look at only Division III schools. It was an interesting process because a lot of the places I applied to in the beginning assumed I wouldn't really want that job because I'd been at the best in Division I. So I finally kind of learned how to write my cover letter to explain, more of how I aligned with the Division III philosophy. And it's great being out of the scholarship business, which I think a lot of coaches don't understand when you say that, but it just adds another whole layer of issues to your team. And, you may not have all of the best swimmers swimming for you at any given time, maybe who are even on your campus, but you have the people that really want to be there. You don't have anybody who's continuing to do it just because they're on a scholarship. And having a team full of people that are really doing it because they love the experience, that's a much better environment to be in.
Yeah, that's definitely I've never dealt with scholarships and all that, and never coached Division I. But it is something. It's something special about a Division III athlete, and most of our coaches are Division III coaches who've been on our show. And there's something rewarding about the student athlete being first, and the way they're involved in the campus, the community. So, yeah, Brad.
Yeah, no, I was going to let you finish. It's something we talk about quite a bit, right, with a lot of our guests, and enjoy, because a lot of us are Division III coaches, and that's kind of been our world in connecting with, and I know that all of us really we talk about that a lot on the phone and a lot of video calls now, because that is, I think, one of the great parts to it. And kind of looking at that, and looking at that experience, tell us about when you got the job there, and you showed up at Colorado College, and you did, and rather than just kind of thinking about the change, what was those first couple of seasons like, and making that adjustment, and not necessarily what was hard, but what did you really enjoy? What was maybe validating about taking that step?
Well, it was an interesting transition, just because this is such a different place. I had spent my college career, my graduate school career, every place I'd coached at big state schools. So not only did I change divisions, but I'm now at a private school. It's 2,000 students. We're on this really unusual academic format called the block plan, where they just take one class at a time. So they do a class 3.5 weeks. We have a 4-day weekend. Then we start a new class. So it's this high intensity, really deep sort of delving into every subject, and a real collaborative learning type of place. And I think in the beginning, you have to learn how the rhythm of the block plan works, and how it affects students, and how that maybe affects the way I design practice at different times during the block. There's certain things that I think we can accomplish throughout most of the block. And then if you get into that last week, and the stress level for them is high, and the intensity is high, and you got to make some adjustments. So kind of learning to deal with that. I have loved how interesting and different all of the students here are, and the experiences they've had, the things they have energy about and knowledge about, and there's never a dull moment.
Brad, how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're good. We probably got Ty, you got one more question, and then I'll take the last question today.
Well, Ann, I guess explain to the audience. It might have been 6 years ago on a training trip, and then you were at the National Conference Championship in a brace, and then at the National Championship meet, which one of your swimmers won the 200 free, and the excitement there, but you couldn't really stand up. But maybe you did. But explain, I guess, to the audience, like, why are you were in a leg brace?
Well, I was actually in a wheelchair and a leg brace.
Personal question. Is this too much?
Yeah, that was 8 years ago.
Sorry, 8 years ago.
I know, hard to believe. I just got an injection in that knee this morning, actually. It's still kind of hanging over me. But yeah, we were on training trip in San Diego, and decided to take a team picture out on the beach. And as I stepped off the seawall after taking a picture, I didn't land right, and my leg shattered, and I spent a few extra days there in San Diego while the team flew home. And yeah, the only way they would let me go back to work after the 3 surgeries was in a wheelchair. So yeah, I have some crazy memories of that. Well, I think at conference, I just about tipped the chair in 2 or 3 times, and some of the guys caught the back of it, and wheeling through at nationals, and Jordan DeGaynor winning that 200 free, and he was a back half swimmer. We knew he'd be probably a little behind at the 100, but I thought he had a chance to win. And at the 100 he was in 7th, and I was a little nervous. And at the 150 he still was in 7th, and at the 175 I caught myself standing up on one leg out of the wheelchair, and somehow from the 175 we went from 5th to 1st, and did a little one-legged jumping around there, but didn't hurt myself too bad.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Please tell me he came over and sat you back down at least and gave you a hug in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You have that kind of all aligned that way. Well, I apologize, John, trying to get into asking those types of questions. We'll pin you for that one, John.
Hopefully it wasn't too personal. He's, I'm sure you didn't let everybody know NCAAs and what happened, but maybe just curious to why you were in a wheelchair and leg brace and then you had Jordan win the national title of 2 free, but
yeah.
That was a crazy end of the year for sure.
Yep.
But I was not going to miss nationals, just like I wasn't going to miss nationals the year that Sarah was born. So I had them induce me the week before.
You told me about that.
And we both went. So that was her beginning in the swimming world.
Yeah, we were giving her a hard time about that when she was on, trying to help continue to help her acknowledge that she is a great swim coach and needs to continue with this as a career, but she'll make that decision for herself, I'm sure. Which good. So it does we are about out of time. So the last question that we ask all of our guests, San, is, we look at, maybe kind of stepping into this persona as a coach and try to relate who, Coach John or Coach Brad, Coach Goodman James represents. And what movie character do you think best aligns with you when you're in coaching mode?
So somebody that I really admire what they've accomplished and I would like to sort of fit into their persona would be Catherine Goebel Johnson from Hidden Figures.
Oh,
she was the mathematician or the computer that really made it possible for us to go to the moon, and the one that John Glenn said he wouldn't fly until Catherine said the figures were right.
That's awesome. That's our first historical real character who isn't a coach. That's a fantastic selection. There you go.
Thanks.
We'll get well. Don't want to rush off, but I know you've said you've had a busy day. I think we're all getting a little weary of video calls and video chats, but it is fun to connect with coaches. And thank you so much for joining us for a little bit here today. We'll kind of give you the last word before we say goodbye and log off.
I guess just finish with, this is kind of my life philosophy. I say I will act with integrity, I will live with gratitude, and I'll share my light with the world. So that's my goal.
Love it. That's awesome, man.
Fantastic.
All right, guys.
This is fun. Ohio, guys. So everybody get a little Tex-Mex. I don't know if you have Tex-Mex where you all live, but.
Well, yeah, Colorado Mexican's not quite the same. It's good, but we're going to make our own tonight.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I will definitely be making my own in Virginia. So, all right. Well, that was good. Thanks everybody for joining us.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good to see you.